Ready to dominate at the plate? Blast Baseball is trusted by more major league and college teams than any other hitting solution. The Blast sensor attaches to the knob of any bat, providing real-time feedback with every swing. Go to blastmotion.com and enter code NOWD1 at checkout to save $25. All right, everybody, it is 9 o'clock. Let's get right into it. We do this show every Monday through Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern on Twitter Spaces. I'm Alan Gay, and this is Now D1 Speaks. Hey, we got a really cool show tonight. I think it's a show that a lot of people are going to absolutely appreciate it. I know I am. I'm absolutely looking forward to this. We've got Molly Moore with us. Molly has a fantastic background. She's got a great Twitter presence. She's a former college coach. She's a mom. We're very, very fortunate to have her on. Hey, Molly, are you there?
I am here. It's good to be here.
Well, thank you, Molly, for taking just a little bit of time to speak with us this evening. Hey, why don't you go ahead and kind of maybe kick it off just a little bit? Give us some background as to what it is that you've been doing, where you're heading, and maybe what it is that you're currently doing.
Okay, sounds great. So I really started my professional career a long time ago, actually. I initially had plans to be a high school teacher and coach from the beginning of my career to the end, and that lasted about 3 years before I decided that I really wanted to kind of pursue something a little bit more than that. And but I knew coaching was always in my blood. And so I spent 10 years as a Division III softball coach, one as an assistant coach, and then took the head coaching position when it opened up, and did that for like I said, for about 10 years, and loved it, loved every minute of it, loved all of the challenges that come with D3 athletics from an administrative and excuse me, and coaching standpoint, and the budgets and everything that goes with that. I embraced it. I love the philosophy behind it. But the challenge, I think, for anyone who coaches as a career is to balance family and the profession. And for women in particular, I think that's a more significant challenge when you're trying to have a family and be all things to everyone. And so at the point that I had my third child, it was sort of my come to Jesus moment, like, hey, I'm not doing both of these very well. And so I made the decision at that point to be a mom and to pursue other career options that would allow me to be home with my kids during normal hours instead of on the road recruiting and on the road traveling for competitions and things of that nature. So I did that. I had a great job that I loved and raised my family, and my kids are now old enough that they're pretty self-sufficient, or at least they think they are. My youngest is 15. And so now I'm actually working at Oakland University. It's a Division I public university just north of Detroit as Director of Communications and Donor Relations. So really employing a lot of that early knowledge with recruiting and using it in the fundraising world. And it's really very similar, believe it or not. So that's what I'm doing now.
What a fantastic introduction. Thank you so much for walking through that. And I got to say, with all the years of experience being a college coach, I think you're absolutely the perfect guest to be with us this evening. So you were an assistant coach where? And then you were a head coach where?
At Adrian College in Southeast Michigan.
Outstanding. So an assistant and head coach.
That's correct.
Right?
Yes. And actually I graduated from Adrian as an undergrad. My husband and I both did. He played football there. I did not, I didn't play sports in college, and that really has framed a lot of my attitude and how I've worked with my kids through their processes of kind of deciding what they want to do between high school and college, because I was not, as a 17-year-old kid, and to be very frank, I feel like in the time that I came through high school, girls' sports were something to do, but it wasn't really anything that any of us were encouraged to do exceptionally well and beyond high school, at least not where I came from. It was be good enough to play now and win some championships for your school. And, maybe a couple people here and there would go on and play, but it just really wasn't the norm where I came from. And so I never really entertained wanting to play beyond high school once it got difficult for me. And I say that because I had a lot of knee issues. I had challenges in that regard, and I just wasn't, as a 17-year-old, made of the right stuff, I think, to overcome that and to want to go on and put into being a college athlete what it required. And it was absolutely the best decision for me at the time. There's no question, because I wouldn't have made it as a college athlete. But looking back, I have a lot of regret that I didn't do things differently, and that I didn't challenge myself, and I didn't take the tougher path, that I took the easy way out. And I've used that really to counsel my kids as they make their decisions, not just relative to sports, but in life, and I think as we talk further, that's going to be really a lot of our conversation. Is you have to figure out what your priorities are and what you're willing to do to meet your goals, and live with no regrets and live fearlessly. And that's what I did not do as a kid, and that's what I would love to encourage every other kid, to be able to do now.
Absolutely. I tell you, you're touching on so many points that are absolutely valuable to our core audience of uncommitted prospects. Again, I think this is fantastic. I tell you, I'd really like to kind of touch on that a little bit more about the no regrets, and really just kind of putting yourself out there. Hey, I think you had an unbelievable perspective not to play college sports, and kind of thinking back over those decisions, and then to be responsible for kids that are obviously student athletes at the college level. How did you go about recruiting those types of players that were going to be successful at Adrian College? I mean, you had to have known what it took at that point, because you did a lot of introspection of your own life. So what kind of qualities were you really looking for in your athletes that would turn you on to them potentially being successful?
I looked at a lot of things, and most of them were character based, to be honest. I mean, obviously, there's no coach out there that's not looking for an athlete with skill and tools. I mean, that's a given. And I was looking for people that had the stuff. And you hear that, and everybody's like, okay, they have it or whatever. But what it comes down to is as an athlete, what are you willing to sacrifice, and what are you willing to do to not only make yourself better, but to make your team better? And an athlete's success at any level does not come in a vacuum. It doesn't come exclusive of what the team does. And so I wanted team players who were willing to make the hard choices and do the hard things to make themselves better and to help our team find success against, in some cases, against many odds. You're not always going to have the best facilities. You're not always going to have the best weather if you're playing a spring sport. You're not always going to have the best, conditions. There's all these intangibles you can't control. I was looking for kids that were willing to control everything that they could, to really move the needle towards being better athletes and people, and again, facilitating the greater good of the team. And we all see, and from a recruiting perspective as a coach, and then as a spectator seat as a parent now, we can all point out the kids that get the job done. They can hit the ball, they can field the ball, they can throw. But you can also identify the kids that are the me kids, and they're not bringing anything to the team, or they're taking away from the team, and so on and so forth. So beyond all of those physical tools and those gifts, what was more important to me was what could they bring from the character standpoint, and truly what were they willing to give up personally to make themselves better. Because the other thing I told everyone was, being recruited and coming here is a guarantee of nothing. All I'm telling you is you have an opportunity to come here and to earn your spot week in and week out, game in, game out, year in, year out. And I think every athlete has to be real enough to recognize that at the college level, a coach is trying to win. And they're always going to try and recruit people better, at least as good or better than the ones they have in the program, right? I mean, that's the only way the program's getting better. So it's particularly timely, I think, now that, we're talking about National Signing Day and all of the excitement that goes around with that. The signing is just the beginning, and the job's not done. It's just starting. Now, you sign or you commit verbally, whatever it is, you get your foot in the door and you're just getting started. So you have to understand that it's work, and every day, every time you set foot on that field, you're earning your job back. And as a coach, if the coach isn't requiring that of their athletes, they're missing out.
What a great perspective. Thank you so much for walking through that. And it means just so much to hear it from a college coach's perspective. So let me ask you something. When you were recruiting and you could see you could see an athlete that absolutely knew how to play softball. She's big, fast, strong, knew the game inside and out, had passion for the game, maybe even had great grades in school as well. What were the intangibles that she could say to you that really made it click with this was a good character person, and this is somebody that could really represent the university? And the reason I'm asking that is not so that someone who is listening can maybe take notes and become an actor when they're talking to a coach, but I'm just thinking, there's a lot of kids out there that are really, really good ball players. But when they had the chance to really kind of sit down and talk to a coach, what are the types of things that you're looking for in their answers to you, or their responses, or their questions, or whatever it is that just kind of clues you into like, hey, this is the type of person that I want representing our program?
hmm I wanted kids that would, they wanted to compete, and they embraced adversity, and they embraced a challenge. Because again, when you're talking about Division III sports, they're not getting a dime athletically to come and play. So you've got to love the sport on the good days and on the bad days. And there's plenty of bad days, and I'm not just talking about the wins and the losses part of it, but there's days that, that it's tough. It's tough to get out of bed at 5 a.m. and go lift with your team in the dead of winter, and it's tough to have to catch a bus and sit, or at the time we had 15 passenger vans. It's tough to cram in a van for 3 hours on the road to go play a doubleheader in 40-degree weather, because in Michigan we don't really get good weather, for spring ball. So, what are you made of when things are difficult? So I was looking for athletes that told me they wanted to compete, and that they embraced adversity. And even a step further than that, they had been through and experienced adversity. It's really easy to be a team player, and it's really easy to excel, and it's really easy to show your best when everything's working in your favor. But what kind of an athlete are you, and what kind of a competitor are you when the chips are down? So I know, if I'm down a run and I need to figure something out in the bottom of the seventh, and I'm looking to the dugout, I know what kid in that dugout can grab a bat and is going to give me the best opportunity to put a run across the board. The battle tested people that to me, brought something that kind of never quit, never say die. I've been through the fire, and I can go through it again. Those were the people that I wanted on my side. And so, that was huge to me. And I loved to talk to kids about, what was the toughest thing as an athlete you've dealt with, on or off the field, really, because the sport is just part of what's happening in their lives. And so, the tough times happen off the field too. So, what have you been through? How did you deal with it? And how do you overcome? More importantly, show me how you compete.
It's good stuff. So, Molly, I have to ask you. You alluded to earlier that you kind of stepped away from the softball field, really, to step into the parenting field and be the mom field. And you had mentioned earlier that your youngest is 15. So, and you also kind of said, hey, some of your experiences have certainly helped you with your kids' decisions. Hey, do you have some kids that are playing college baseball or college sports, or are they at that point in their life yet?
So I have three kids. My oldest is actually a senior at Adrian College as well, and he went in as a freshman to run track, and that lasted one indoor season. And he said, "You know what, Mom? This I'm not willing to continue putting in the time to, to this, for what I'm sacrificing. And we had a real honest conversation. He says, I want you to know I'm not quitting to, because I want to quit. He says, I value the other things happening in my college life a little bit more than this right now. So he knew enough to walk away, and I respected the heck out of him for that, because he wasn't cheating himself. He wasn't cheating his team. He wasn't cheating his coach. So we've been through that part of it. My middle son actually is in the process of making his final commitment. He'll be signing his letter of intent actually or tomorrow. And he's going to sign that letter, and it's been a long process for him. And to be very honest, I've got 10 years as a college coach, but a lot has changed since I was in that role. And I think the last few years in particular, between COVID and between the changes in the draft and the changes in the transfer portal, have really turned the recruiting process into this massive upheaval. So where, a few years, maybe 5 years ago, I thought when the time came, I was going to be aptly prepared to help guide him through the process. As time went on and we saw a lot of the changes that have happened through the last couple of years, I realized that there was so much I didn't know. And so I aligned myself with other people in our corner to help us. And so I've learned a ton through there. And in turn, I'm trying to help some other families who've reached out and said, hey, walk us through. What did you do? How did you handle this? But anyway, that's a whole other thing. But so my middle son will be playing Division II baseball. He's attending Walsh University in Canton, Ohio. We are thrilled for him. He had a unfortunate incident, and back in May ruptured his UCL and underwent Tommy John surgery. And so we really didn't know how that was going to affect his recruiting process. I mean, to be honest, in May of your junior year, the timing couldn't be worse. There were a lot of tears shed for a long time over that, trying to figure out, where do we go from here and how do we help him? And from the mental health standpoint of it, I was extremely concerned. We were very, very grateful that a lot of the coaches who reached out to him before he was hurt stayed around after. Some did not. We knew that if he hadn't gotten on a radar before he was injured, he would after. And so that was a bit of a challenge, but at the end of the day, he made the decision based on a number of factors. We did a ton of due diligence, and we are 100% confident that he has found a home where his development is going to be key, that's not anything that they overlook. He's got like-minded individuals, coaches that have really the same sort of philosophy that we do. And above all else, it was really important to us. And it's, you always hear, go where you're wanted, right? You hear that all through the recruiting world, go where you're wanted, go where you're wanted. Well, it became very clear very quickly where he was wanted most. And this is not disrespectful to any other coach, because listen, I get it. I understand the concerns. You've got a kid that completely just blew his UCL. Like, do I want to waste scholarship money on him, not knowing that, what he's going to be able to do for us, and so on and so forth. So I understand the practical perspective, but the coaches at Walsh never quit on him. They were there before, they were there the day he had surgery, touching base, and they've been there every step of the way after. So we're certain it's a great fit for him. And then I have a 15-year-old daughter she plays 3 sports, and right now she's enjoying doing all that and being with her friends. So we just always told our kids, to be honest, Alan, that we're going to put in as parents as much you put into your development. So you show us how important it is to you and how much you want it, and we'll match that with our efforts and our resources. And so we kind of key into what our kids are telling us. And right now my daughter's telling me that, she's happy to be there having fun with her friends, and that's cool too.
That is cool as well. And I got to say, what a great family. And thank you for walking through all 3 of their lives and where they are right now. And I love that last piece about, hey, whatever it is that you're willing to be committed to, we're committed to it as well. And I think it's fantastic. I think about your first son with track and field. Hey, that's what he wanted to do. And my goodness, you supported him through it. And when he got there, he started thinking, you know what? I'm really going to get a job when this is all said and done. I want to concentrate on school. And I'm sure you and your husband said, you know what? That's probably a pretty good plan. That makes a lot of sense. You are going to have a life after this. And you supported it. I think that's phenomenal. That's the way to do it. I absolutely want to talk a little bit more about your middle son. I mean, that fits our core audience to a T. And congratulations. What an exciting day. NLI. I mean, that's a big deal. But as you said, hey, that's just the start of the process now. You know what I mean? Just because you're signing, that doesn't mean anything. But let me ask you something. I think it's phenomenal that he found a place to go that supported him all the way through the injury, through the rehab, just every step. I mean, they were lockstep with your son and with you as well. And I think that's just so cool. Very, very fortunate to find that. It sounds like just an ideal fit. But let me ask you something. How did he originally maybe get on Walsh University's radar, so to speak? What was it that first attracted them to him?
Well, I will be honest, we had, and they're not the only one. There were a lot of schools that had reached out to him that we had never heard of. And everyone had the same response because Nolan would say, you know, have you seen me play? How do you know about me, or this and that? And everyone had the same thing through social media, through Twitter. And so it's something that I've talked actually to a lot of other student athletes who have asked me, you know, how do you go through this process and whatever. You have to find a really good balance, and it worked for us, and it worked for Nolan, between humility and advocating for yourself, because it is a different world with all of the changes in the recruiting process and regulations and so on and so forth. So you have to be willing. I hate to use the words self-promote because it sounds so bleh, yuck, you know, but you really do. You have to be able to advocate for your abilities and your skills and your character. And right now, the best way to do that, at least in our experience, was through social media, particularly through Twitter. I see middle school kids with Twitter accounts, which I think is silly, to be very frank. And let me qualify this by saying, hey, this is just my opinion. I'm no expert. You know, I can only speak to what worked for us and so on and so forth. But we never really permitted our kids to be on social media as middle school kids at all in any way, shape, or form. And so I sort of helped Nolan through that process when we found we needed to start doing something to meet coaches where they were. And increasingly they were, and they are, on Twitter. And so we loaded a ton of video. We were very intentional about the types of things we put. You don't have to hire somebody to make you a professional video. You need to simply show reps, show what you can do. Hit the ball, field the ball, throw the ball, maybe do some speed work, but you know, angles and reps. And it can be very basic. Just make sure it's clear footage. And then we also included a little bit of game footage in there too. And you know, highlight reels are good. There's no question, but it's also good to see situational types of things too. And one of the things that we felt was an asset for Nolan, and he's a pitcher and an infielder, and he can hit the ball, but he's not dropping bombs every day. What his asset was and is as a hitter is he's a great situational hitter. So we tried to highlight those types of things in the videos that we put out too, like, hey, runners on second and third, and he's hitting line drives to right field and bringing in 2 runs. Like, those are the types of things that I think as a player, yes, capitalize on your strengths and showcase your strengths. And that's what worked for Nolan, was a really good Twitter presence. But again, we didn't just put everything. We didn't put, anything. We were intentional and very careful that, he would go to post something and I'd say, make sure you run it by someone. Don't spell anything wrong. Use punctuation. Don't use your texting language, So you have to look at all of that as your calling card. And kind of a resume. And so if you're trying to impress a coach or, your grandparents, and that was the other thing. Don't put anything there you wouldn't say to grandma and grandpa, So use it to your advantage, because more and more I hear a lot of coaches, and I had a ton of coaches that would reach out to me before, no, and even before he was a sophomore, just kind of asking about him. And so yeah, use social media to your advantage. That's the long answer to your question. I apologize for that. It was a little much.
No, it wasn't a little much. It was spot on. Thank you so much for walking through that, Molly. It was great advice. And that's the big thing. We talk about this all the time on this show, is how do you get on a coach's radar? And I think social media is absolutely made a difference in the last 10 years or so as to how to get noticed. But with that said, I got to tell you, the little pieces that you were hitting on really sounded very detailed. You mentioned earlier that some other folks, maybe other parents, maybe student athletes, some people have reached out to you for various types of help. Are you helping anyone currently in the recruiting process? Is that maybe a new chapter in your life or anything like that?
I would love for it to be like a whole new chapter. I'm really just kind of helping friends, who have kids going through the process right now, because they've seen how we've done it, and again, it's, oh gosh, I've made it my second job to help him, because it comes down to, again, our commitment to him when he knew what he wanted, and we saw the work he was putting in on his part. I committed to him. I was going to do everything I could to help him, and my husband the same. And so in that vein, I made it my job to learn how to navigate the process. And again, I aligned myself. And that's the other thing. You have to be really careful. There's all kinds of self-proclaimed experts out there. One, I am no expert. I can only speak to what worked for us. And so you have to be careful about who you align yourself with. I will also tell you, we, as a family, made a decision that we were not putting money into showcases and things like that. As a younger kid, we allowed Nolan to attend one, and that one experience was just one that we felt was not worth the investment that we put into it. And so from there on forward, he never attended another paid event. Now, I'm not saying that stuff doesn't work. There are a lot of ways to get on coaches' radars. I'm just saying that what worked for us when we made the decision that we weren't going to invest in those things, we knew that it meant an investment of time and other things like the social media component and drafting emails. So, I mentioned intentionality a couple different times, and that was another thing, is we had a lot of conversations about, what do you want to do? Because someday the baseball's going away. So what is it? Who are you going to be when that happens? Because you're more than a baseball player. So who are you going to be 15 years from now? And how are you going to get there? Where, what schools are preparing you for the rest of your life? So let's look at that. And then let's marry that with, the other things, like geographically, do you need to stay around home? Can you go far away? And, all of those other things. And so we started a spreadsheet, and then there he sent out emails one by one addressed to each individual coach, with his information, and started reaching out to them that way. We didn't tag multiple coaches on Twitter. And that's something that, we do see a lot, and that I urged him to stay away from. Fine if you want to send things to specific coaches, but don't put a blanket, tweet out and hit 10 different coaches. Not that they don't know that you're looking at other places, but again, it's in the same way when you get a letter in the mail that's, to resident or to homeowner, what means more, that or something that's got your name on it, So we put a lot of work into it, and it was my second job as a mom to help him navigate that. Did we do everything right? Certainly not. Did we learn a lot along the way? Absolutely. But I think in the end, the proof is in where he's at now. He's He's partway through his year. It's been a really difficult year with this injury, and he's missed out on a lot, but we now have an opportunity to just celebrate his next step because he's signing his NLI. And so some of it worked. If we screwed some things up, the good stuff, I guess, outweighed what we screwed up.
Well, job well done. And thank you again for walking through that. And I think one of the biggest takeaways that I really kind of picked up on what you were saying is there's not a cookie cutter response to being recruited or a cookie cutter plan. Everyone's a little different. And what works for you may not necessarily have worked for someone else, or maybe there's a combination of things. But it's just each person is truly unique. And I think that if you can get noticed by the coaches that you want to be noticed by, it really, honestly, really starts coming down to that character issues that you were talking about. Not issues, but who your character is and what the fit is. And I got to say, it sounds cliche, but when you're making a decision, when your son or your daughter is making a decision to be a student athlete, it's not a 4-year decision. It truly is a 40-year decision. And I think you need to find a school that absolutely fits you, whether you are playing sports or not. If it's the right type of culture, if they have the major that you're interested in, the size of the school is what you like, the distance from home is what you really desire. If you're checking off all those types of boxes, then whatever sport you're playing, it's just going to be a natural fit. That's going to be where you really belong. But I got to tell you, Molly, I love listening to everything you say. I mean, I tell you what, you are, you're very, very, you are a skilled college coach, but I got to say, man, you're a skilled pre-college parent as well. That was outstanding. Really, the advice that you were taking on, and I love that second job. I know there's a lot of parents that'll be listening that are absolutely saying, yeah, this is my second job as well, because you can't help but get invested in your kids, and it really starts becoming a big part of your life and helping them, on the path to wherever their future is going to lead. So that was outstanding. I absolutely appreciate that. Yeah, definitely. Hey, I do want to thank everyone that's had the opportunity to join us this evening. We're recording this space. If you did get in late, don't worry about it. We're going to be able to retweet it out later in its entirety. So Molly, let me ask you about you. Before we hopped on this little conversation, I kind of Googled who is Molly Moore, and I was like, good night. Molly Moore worked for Detroit Tigers. How in the world did that come about?
Oh gosh, that's what I always lead. That's my icebreaker when you have to have something like, what would somebody not know about you? This is what I always lead with. So, you know, sometimes in our marriages, our spouses don't necessarily listen to us when we say something, and this is a perfect lesson in that regard because I had been away from coaching for quite a few years, and my husband and I were sitting at a Detroit Tigers game one day. We shared a season ticket package with a bunch of friends, and so we used to go to a lot of games. And one night we're sitting there, and I was really starting to get the itch to get back on a ball field because, again, the kids were starting to get older, and I really missed it. And I think that's, and anybody who's coached knows that, once it's in your blood, it's always in your blood. It's, whether you're sitting in the bleachers watching your kid or watching it on TV, you always know better than the person who's out there, actually running the show, right? So, and I say that facetiously because, but all of that to say, we were sitting at a Tiger game one night, and the crew's prepping the field before the game. And I said to my husband, I want to do that. And I'm going to get a job on the ground crew. And, I got the token chuckle, and, he went back to drinking his beer and, whatever he was doing that night. And then, I don't know, a few weeks went by, or maybe it was even a couple months. And just on a whim one day, I started looking at job opportunities with the Tigers, and lo and behold, they had posted this part-time ground crew position, which there they call tarp crew, because the tarp crew, even though you're doing the other ground crew stuff, you're the ones that are pulling that tarp when it starts to rain too. So nonetheless, I completed an application, really never thought I would ever get a phone call. It was just kind of like, okay, whatever, I did my part. And I think it was within 24 hours, and they said, hey, you want to come interview? And I remember calling my husband that day, telling him, hey, I've got an interview tomorrow. And at the time I had a job where I was doing a lot of public relations stuff. And so it wasn't unusual for me to have like an interview with a news outlet or something about the place where I was working. So he says, oh yeah, what's this for? What paper? And I said, no, a job interview. And he says, what do you mean a job interview? I said, for the Tigers. Remember when I had told you, I wanted to work on the ground crew? And he's like, what are you talking about? He had no recollection because he didn't listen. So, fast forward a couple days later, I went up and, it was the best interview ever. I think we sat like in the ground crew lounge and watched Sports Center. And hey, by the way, can you lift a 50-pound bag of field dirt and da 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 da? Yep. Okay. Well, here, we'll see you at orientation in a few weeks. That was it. So it was a great gig. I did it for 6 or 7 years until COVID hit, and I didn't go back after that. But it was a great gig, and the best part about it was it gave me the opportunity to get back on the field, to get dirty, to do the stuff that it wasn't always fun, but still to be around the ball field was super cool. I met a lot of great people. I worked with some great people, and it was just it for me was an opportunity to exercise, doing something a little out of my comfort zone too. And that's, again, I think something else I would tell any high school student athlete or a college student athlete is, be fearless, be willing to change it up a little bit, be willing to get out of your comfort zone to pursue whatever it is you want to do. And so for me, that was it for a little while. I did that part-time and loved every bit of it. I'm still not, like GM or anything like that, so it didn't get me any. but it was great. I've got some great stories, and not that I can ever share with anyone, but a lot of good stuff. So.
Well, that's too bad. Literally, my follow-up question was, what was the most memorable moment that you had?
Well, I will tell you, I think enough time has passed on this. I can share because it's really a very interesting dynamic too, because other than our head groundskeeper, who was female, and the assistant for part-time was female, I was the only other female on the crew of like 50 guys. And so that was sort of an interesting dynamic. But coming out of being in the college sports world as a coach, where there were so many men, that I was working with, it was not altogether, weird, but no, probably the best experience I had was early on. One of my first years, the Tigers were in the playoffs, and watching, being part of the playoff run and actually like on the field for that kind of excitement was really super cool. And but the highlight of it, and I can't remember, I think we played Baltimore, who knocked us out, and they clinched it at Comerica Park when we were there, and I was assigned to clean the visitors' dugout after the game. And of course, and again, I apologize if I'm wrong, but I think it was Baltimore who had knocked us out and won it. A bunch of their fans were hovering around the dugout in hopes that the players would come back out on the field after, the game, as they were celebrating. But the bulk of the stadium had been cleared. The game had been over for a long time. We're still cleaning the dugouts, and part of that responsibility is hosing everything down. And so there's all these Baltimore fans like kind of surrounding the dugout, and there's about 5 of us in there cleaning, and the guy with the hosing everything down, and they start chanting all of their chants, and we're bitter because we just got knocked out, whatever. And the guy with the hose all of a sudden just kind of looks at the rest of us, and he grabs it, and he can't see who's up there, they can't see him. He just took it and gave one quick spray up in the air across the top of the dugout, and got every single one of them, which was like sweet revenge for us. However, they were so, up in their feelings about having just one. It didn't matter. You could have taken a fire hose to them and they wouldn't have cared because they just clinched, the series. But it was cool. So, yeah.
I bet it was cool. What was the temperature?
Oh, my gosh. That's funny. Now that you say that, I didn't think about that. It had to, we're talking, October in Michigan. So It was probably around 40 degrees if it was that. Yeah.
Good payback right there. I do not blame you, man. That's so
Yeah.
awesome. What a cool experience that you had. And so now I have to ask you, what is GALvanize?
So GALvanize is another example of me kind of getting antsy and jumping out of my comfort zone a little bit. But so I will share that a couple of years ago, and this is kind of how I got started with the connection with GALvanize through Twitter again. I don't know if you remember when Dwayne Haskins, who had played for Ohio State and was currently with the Steelers, was unfortunately in an accident when he was down in Florida with the Steelers, I think in training camp or something. And at the time when that happened and the news of his death broke, the initial stories that were written about him and again announcing that he had passed away led with a lot of his professional career stats and things like that weren't necessarily altogether positive from a playing perspective. So the story of this untimely and really sad, unfortunate loss of this human life was lost in in all of the mud about, how he didn't really have the career that they hoped he would in the NFL at that point in time, and so on and so forth. And so the person who had broken the story had taken really a lot of grief, and rightfully they should have, because they lost the human perspective at that point. And as I'm reading these stories, one of them that was sort of a rebuttal to the initial one was a story that was written by Laura Okmin, who is an NFL sideline reporter for Fox, and one of the longest tenured NFL sideline reporters. And she had written a story really in response saying, okay, this is really what you need to know about Dwayne Haskins. I interviewed him recently, and it was just this beautiful story about the charity work he had done and all of these great things he had done in his life beyond football that had never really been told. And it really impressed me and struck me how she took this circumstance and turned it around to really create this narrative of this beautiful human being who had lost his life in such a horrible way, and how he should be remembered for the good he did. So in reading that, I thought, gosh, I need to learn more about Laura. I don't, I've heard of her, but I don't really know her. So I went to her website and lo and behold found that part of what she does off of the football sideline is she had this link to GALvanize, which at the time I thought was like a philanthropic organization. And so I'm reading about it and how it exists to mentor young women entering the sports world for professional careers, particularly in media. And so as I got reading, I thought, this is something I really want to support. So I emailed her and I said, I'd like to learn more. I really had the intention of thinking like philanthropically, I would do something to support whatever effort, this was. And she emailed me back within 5 minutes. And I had, not to open another can of worms, but I've had some experience with Title IX and I'm a really huge supporter of women in sports and opportunities for women in sport. And so I had shared with her some of my experiences in that regard. And she emailed me back right away and said, we need to talk. Can I call you? And I thought, yeah, So she called me right away and we spent about an hour on the phone. And the first thing she said is, I feel like I was meant to meet you right now. She said, this is so strange. Like, I feel such a connection with you. We need to talk more. So as we talked, she told me about GALvanize and that it really wasn't this like philanthropic endeavor that I thought that it was. But really, she said, it's my way to give back to the profession that's given me so much. But she said when she came through and was trying to break into the sports world as a young female, there weren't a lot of opportunities, but there also weren't any mentors. So she said I was kind of flying blind trying to work my way into the industry that was male dominated, and really with no idea how to get there, no networking opportunities, and she said it was difficult at times. And so basically, she said, I started GALvanize as this way to do some networking and some professional development for young women walking the same path or with intentions of walking the same path so that they don't have to go through the same struggles that I did. So she said, we do these different boot camps is what she calls them, is during her off season, during the summer, she has partnered with different NFL teams. So I attended one with the Jacksonville Jaguars, but she's done them with the Bills, with the Cowboys, with the Rams, a number of different teams. And essentially what she does is she opens up for particularly young women. Of course, I don't meet that demographic. So I was involved in sort of a different way, but new to the profession, to apply through a letter to her to come and be part of these boot camps that she'll take about 20 people. They partner with the NFL teams during their rookie camp and then go on site. So for example, she said, Molly, I need you to come to Jacksonville. I want you to come and be part of the boot camp with the Jaguars. Okay, cool. What are we doing? Right. So we fly down. It's 2 days. We're day one. The women who are all selected gather, and it's a day really spent mentoring and working with Laura, talking through a lot of the challenges, because some of these women are still in college, some are right out of college looking for their first jobs. Others are actually already in the industry and, maybe facing some struggles or looking to move to something else and whatever. So it's a lot of network, but it's a lot of soul searching too. Like, what are our struggles and how can we help each other get through this? And then the other part of it is, I think I had used the phrase earlier, and I have to give all credit to Laura for it. It's being able to work with people and recognize that people are more than what they do, and leading with their who. So as sports reporters in particular, and this speaks to how she addressed the Dwayne Haskins story, it's really training new media to look beyond the athletes as athletes into who are they as people, and use when you're interviewing them and as you're telling their story. So then the second day, we're partnered with the rookies of the football team that we're working with. We're assigned a rookie, and we spend the day with that rookie, kind of working with them in the same way we just came through our first day, helping them to create their narrative and like a little bit of media training, I guess, with that too. So you're taking a kid that's right out of college, and they're thrust into a national spotlight, many of them, because you're talking top draft picks in a lot of situations. And all of a sudden you're giving them all this money. You're putting them in the national spotlight, and you're putting the weight and expectation of professional success upon them, and expecting them to be able to not only, to handle it and to succeed, but then be able to talk to media about it too. And so we spend a day with them, talking about how they how they own their story. And so it's a lot of kind of back and forth. And so that's what the boot camps are. But then beyond that, GALvanize is not just the boot camps, but it's the ongoing network. So we have group chats that are 365 days a year. So we're all staying in touch. And when something's going on with somebody, or somebody needs help finding a job, or somebody hears of a job, we're all the hundreds of us are staying in touch in that way. And then she's also growing it so that there are bigger workshops and things like that. I went to Nashville this summer for one that was like 50 women, and it was the same kinds of things. But it's really all about networking and mentoring. And so all of that to say, all of the information is on her website. And actually, if somebody just wanted to Google Laura Okmin GALvanize, they would find it. But I would really recommend it for young women of any age, any women new to the profession in any part of sports. It doesn't have to be media. We have a lot of women that are behind the scenes in like video production, social media, that type of stuff. Look it up. See how you can get involved. Reach out to Laura. She's a great resource, as is everybody else that's part of GALvanize. It's just a really great asset for young women that are looking to pursue careers in sports.
Hey, that's really interesting. I mean, and certainly Dwayne Haskins. I mean, that's very, very recent. That's just in the last year and a half, maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
So you're still with GALvanize?
So yes, and so it's kind of like, it's weird to say with GALvanize because it's not like, I mean, yes, I'm still affiliated. Like once you're part of it, you're part of it. Um, but it's like this time of year, there's not a whole lot going on because Laura's traveling, weekly to be on the football sideline. But it is certainly ongoing communication. Like I said, we've got our group chats and things like that. Like every single day somebody's checking in and whatever. So yes, I am certainly part of it. I'm one of just a handful of older women. Laura and my friend Anne, who's part of it, and I are all the same age, and there's a couple others that are so we're like the old ladies of the group. So I guess I prefer to say mentors, but it's not really fair to me to say that either because like the sports media is not necessarily my wheelhouse. So the younger women are mentoring me in ways far beyond, what I could ever do for them. But yeah, so I'm still part of it, and it's really a great resource for these women and something that I'm really excited to see continue to grow.
Molly, I got to tell you, this has been a fantastic evening. I have just thoroughly enjoyed our conversation and getting to know you a little bit better. I mean, you've really had a very diverse, fascinating career. And one of the things that just popped out at me, and it's something I always love to say myself, and I always kind of think to myself, if I'm a little bit nervous, if I'm putting myself into a position that I'm not comfortable with, I'm probably doing the right thing. And you've alluded to that several times, not only about your coaching career, reflecting back over your own playing career that probably kind of got things started, certainly working with your children, looking at the last few things that you've done in your career, whether it was, hey, I'm going to go work on a field grounds crew, or I'm going to get involved with helping women do what it is that they would like to do in sports, broadcasting, or whatever it may be. You've just kind of pushed yourself and just keep opening up new envelopes that, you know what, you didn't know if you were going to be successful or not successful, but you wanted that challenge. And I think that's just really exciting. That's something I like to hear about. And I'm just happy for you. I think you put together just a fantastic life. It sounds like you got 3 fantastic children. I could not be happier for you in regards to Nolan. I know this is really exciting time of his life, but it's an exciting time for you and your husband and y'all's lives as well. I mean, it's just really, really cool. And then thank you for all the advice for the recruiting piece. I mean, just the kind of stepping through what it is that could potentially help other uncommitted prospects out there get noticed. And just those were simple simple pieces of advice that you were given that everyone can do. Everyone has a phone. They can pick it up and they can video it, and you can do a little bit of editing, and you can write an email yourself to a coach. You don't need to copy paste anything. You need to, hey, this is why I would be an asset to you, coach. And, and this is what I would bring to the table. This is what I like about your school. This is what I want to major in. This is what I like about your team and how I would be able to help your team improve. Everybody can do those types of things. I just got to say, kind of just recapping our entire conversation by saying all of that. This has been a fantastic night. And I'm so happy that you agreed to get on this podcast, because I got to tell you, you're already helping a lot of people just in your own methods and your own presence, but you're going to touch a lot of lives that you may not have thought that you could have touched by just hopping on this. And I'm very, very grateful that you agreed to just spend a little bit of time with us. So thank you, Molly.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
It has been fun. Let's kind of end it with one last thing. And it's a question that I love. And I'd kind of like for you just to give a little bit of advice. And it's an age group that I think is kind of critical if it's an age group that's looking to play at the next level. And that's really kind of like freshmen in high school, like right now, as you're kind of getting started in your freshman year. If you are really good at softball, baseball, soccer, football, whatever your sport is, and you just want to be good for as long as you can be good, what kind of advice would you give those freshmen?
Without question, keep it fun. Don't let it become a job. Yeah. I don't even think I can say anything more than that, because when it quits being fun, then it's that much more difficult. You can love something and have have it be your passion, but you can get to a point where it's not fun anymore, and you just gotta keep it fresh, keep it fun, and if it's burdensome, or if you get to a point where it isn't fun, you gotta be honest with yourself, and don't let your parents dictate your path. Don't let the adults in your life dictate your path. Keep it fun, be present, be now, enjoy all of the little steps along the way. Don't get too burdened and stressed with what the future's going to bring.
Man, that's fantastic advice. And just again, thank you for being part of our show. And thank you to everyone that was able to dial in this evening, or anyone that's going to be able to listen to the podcast. We absolutely appreciate your support, not only for Now D1 Speaks, but certainly for Molly Moore as well. And I think with that, we're just going to say good night. Hey, let me ask you something. Are you ready to dominate at the plate this season? Blast Baseball is the #1 hitting improvement solution, trusted by more major league, college, and travel ball teams than any other. The Blast sensor attaches to the knob of any bat, providing real-time feedback with every swing. Metrics are automatically sent to a smartphone app, generating insights that allow you to analyze and improve your hitting like never before. Go to blastmotion.com and enter code NOWD1, and you will save $25 at checkout. Unlock your potential with Blast.